Welcome to British Airshows 98, the review of all the best action that this year includes hundreds of aircraft from 12 different airshows. Our cameras have recorded the rich diversity of the airshow scene, now the most popular activity of the British summer. Undoubtedly, 1998 was the year of the anniversary. 50 years since the Berlin airlift began. Also 50 years since the SBAC moved their regular airshow to Farnborough. And we start the proceedings with the celebrations for 80 years of the Royal Air Force. The RAF pulled out all the stops at Fairford this year, and one of the highlights was a set of flypasts portraying the aircraft that have served across those 80 years. In this formation, you can see Vic Norman's beautifully restored Curtiss Jenny making its UK debut. Now are some of the most popular sights at airshows: Spitfires and Hurricanes, the fighters that played a vital role in the Second World War. And here are the aircraft which brought the RAF into the jet age: Meteor, Vampire, Venom, Gnat and Hunter. We'll be seeing a lot more of this Delta Jet's Black Arrow's Hunter T-7A later in the show. And finally, here are the frontline aircraft of today. It seemed that the RAF wanted to celebrate in style this year, as the cream of their display pilots and aircraft attended dozens of shows. Here are some of their best displays of the year. The Tornado F-3 is the RAF's sole air defence fighter. First time that role has been entrusted to a single aircraft type. It was designed purely for the RAF as a development from the GR-1 bomber, and it's been in service for 11 years. Here's the F-3's elder brother, the Tornado GR-1. It's the aircraft that introduced variable wing sweep into the RAF, and in this display, the crew, Flight Lieutenants Paul Gerard and Ken McLean, show the various wing positions and their uses. Just remember when you see it hurtling through the air, it weighs 30,000 pounds, and that's when it's empty. Fully loaded, it's double that. Now we're going to see one of the RAF's big birds, the VC-10K. This C Mark I flies with 10 Squadron out of Bryce Norton. VC-10s have been serving with the RAF for more than 30 years, initially as long-range transports and subsequently as tankers. One of the biggest and most impressive aircraft flown by the RAF is Nimrod, the mighty hunter. Developed from the de Havilland Comet 4 airliner, Nimrod has become the powerful protector of Britain's coastal waters. Even in the murky skies over Mildenhall, you can see and hear the immense power of its 4 Rolls-Royce Spey engines, giving out an enormous combined 48,000 pounds of thrust. Perhaps Nimrod typifies the RAF over the last 80 years. Powerful, protective and lethal when called upon to fight. What can you say about this aircraft? It seems as though it's been around forever. The mighty Hercules is the stalwart of the RAF, heavy lifter extraordinaire, versatile, rugged, and above all, reliable. Here it is, showing its paces at Kemble Air Day. Later on, we'll be showing you the new version of the Hercules, the C-130J, which it's hoped will take the RAF well into the next century. The Jaguar has 2 anniversaries all of its own this year. It's celebrating 25 years in service and 30 years since its first flight. Despite its age, it's still a formidable ground attack fighter, demonstrated by its impeccable record in the Gulf War and its subsequent deployment to Kosovo. It doesn't matter how often you go to an airshow, you never tire of watching the Harrier. Rolly Jarman is the 1998 Harrier GR7 display pilot, and his routines have dazzled hundreds of thousands of spectators. So just enjoy this fabulous aircraft performing at North Weald. Training is a vital element of the RAF's success. What they lack in numbers is more than made up by the quality of the crew. So now we're going to see the aircraft that RAF pilots have to master before going on to fast jets. It needed a pretty exceptional aircraft to replace the extraordinary Chipmunk as the basic trainer, and Bulldog fitted the bill. Like Jaguar, it's celebrating 25 years in service this year. Here in the solo short Tucano is Flight Lieutenant Rob Harrison. He's showing the amazing manoeuvrability of this turboprop-powered aircraft. Definitely a highlight from Fairford was this figure 80, performed by 21 Tucanos of No. 1 Flying Training School based at Linton-on-Ouse. There's been a lot of criticism of the Typhoon. This is partly because very little's been seen of it on the display circuit. But finally, at the SBAC show at Farnborough, it was put through the routine that we'd all waited for. The Royal Naval Air Station at Yeovilton in Somerset grabbed the opportunity of a break in the July weather to stage their first air day for 2 years. Yeovilton gives the crowd the chance to see a number of types that don't fly elsewhere during the season. You'll definitely not see this formation anywhere else. 9 Sea Harrier FA2s form what has been called in naval parlance the Rough Diamond. These come from 3 of the squadrons based at Yeovilton, 800, 801 and 899. Believe it or not, this level of precision was achieved with barely any rehearsal at all. Later in the day, these two Sea Harriers put on one of the displays of the year. "16 years ago, this aircraft wouldn't have been welcomed into British skies. It's a Dassault Super Étendard, which gained its infamous reputation as the Exocet carrier of the Argentinian Air Force. It caused havoc by sinking HMS Sheffield and the supply ship Atlantic Conveyor during the Falklands War in 1982. This one, however, comes from the French naval base at Landivisiau. And here's another naval visitor to these skies, this time at Farnborough, the McDonnell Douglas FA-18 Hornet. It was originally specified as two distinct aircraft, one fighter and one strike attack. But the FA-18 fulfills both these roles and has even taken over some of the F-14 Tomcat's fighter duties. We now move back in time to the days when aircraft didn't have to be so fast. The classic fairy swordfish of the Royal Navy historic flight, complete with underslung torpedo. The swordfish was the mainstay of the Fleet Air Arm's strike force throughout the Second World War. Despite its speed, less than 140 miles an hour at full throttle, the swordfish sank more tonnage of enemy shipping than any other Allied aircraft. In 1948, the Fleet Air Arm received its first Hawker Sea Furies. It was a time when the RAF was replacing its frontline aircraft with jets. The Navy, however, persevered with piston engines. This Sea Fury FB-11 is one of the few remaining airworthy examples. This year, Yeovilton celebrated 40 years of commando helicopter operations. The grand finale enacted a commando assault, and what a showpiece it was. 12 Sea Kings, 2 Sea Harriers, 2 Lynx and 2 Gazelles showed the thunderstruck crowd just how it was done. The end of the amazing commando assault leads us nicely into some more helicopters. And this time it's the Army, or more correctly the Army Air Corps. The biannual International Airshow, staged at Middle Wallop, deep in the heart of the Hampshire countryside, quite rightly gives the helicopter a chance to shine. And what better way to start than with the world's greatest helicopter display team, the Blue Eagles.
Support 273 windovers to run back away from the crowd. About 50 or 60 degrees goes up, 85 degrees back, round they go.
1998 marked the 30th continuous year of the Army's helicopter display team, and they've travelled more widely than ever before. Team leader Mark Traffier tells us about their season.
What makes us the world's greatest helicopter display team is the format of the team. We've got 4 Gazelles and 1 Lynx, showing the 2 main aircraft that the Army are operating. Also the amount of manoeuvres that we are cleared to take the aircraft through, and the sheer hard work and effort of the team from the very start in making and choreographing an exciting display. The job of creating the display and devising the format of the display falls to the team leader. At the beginning of the year, he knows the capabilities of the aircraft, and he knows that all the pilots, first-class pilots, can fly the aircraft to do those manoeuvres. So he just sits down with his previous experience that he's had in the years he's flown before. He knows how the aircraft can move across the ground, what manoeuvres they can do to get into those positions, and he just makes the display up from there. Yes, we try and keep them close so that we're not only displaying the absolute extreme limits of the aircraft, but something that would be practical. Now, for instance, the backflip that the Lynx has been doing this year is not something you would use normally, but it's one of the highlights of the show. But the Gazelles doing wingovers. A wingover is a normal military manoeuvre to get the aircraft to turn through 180 degrees normally, and with a short radius turn. We extend that into doing 270 and 360 wingovers, but the basis of the manoeuvre is a normal military manoeuvre. And those manoeuvres are taught to basic students here at the School of Army Aviation at Middle Wallop.
The centrepiece of the display is performed by the Lynx, still the holder of the world helicopter speed record. The pilot is Al Moyes.
Although we do these manoeuvres fairly routinely as part of flying, they have to be done with precision and have to be done on time, and they have to be done exactly right, and have to be done in all wind conditions. It's all very well doing manoeuvre when the wind is absolutely on the nose, but during display flying you can't choose where the wind's coming from. So, and wind is important and helicopters. So there's a great deal of practice and training, individual training to get up to speed, and then getting together as a team and producing the final product. There is no other helicopter display team which displays in such close formation. That's the closest helicopter formation you'll see anywhere in the world this year was the 4 Gazelles when they're in the Diamond. It's quite impressive, and anybody who knows anything about helicopters appreciates that. And even if you don't know anything about helicopters, just think about it really. If a fixed-wing aircraft is flying and the wingtips touch, okay, so what? There's no damage. With a helicopter, you just cannot afford for any contact between the blades at all. And so when you look at the display, just look how close they are, and look at the manoeuvres they're doing whilst they're in close formation, and that's why they are the best. We call it toaster. That's our team leader's name for it. And so the 4 Gazelles are sitting in the hover and the Lynx comes through it. Now, believe it or not, you get an awful lot of downwash through that manoeuvre, and that's the one where Grant, my co-pilot, and I brace ourselves. It's not the backflip, it's going through the 4 Gazelles, and that's the one we probably dislike the most.
Continuing the anniversary theme, the Gazelle celebrated its silver jubilee in the Army Air Corps with a flyby from 25 aircraft. The Gazelle is the oldest of the helicopters in the Army, and it'll be due for retirement quite soon. Then the Lynx will take over, and the Lynx itself will be replaced by this awesome beast, the Westland AH-64 Apache. The Apache is seen here during firing tests on Salisbury Plain. So will the future of the Blue Eagles rest with this helicopter? Well, we'll just have to see in a few years' time. And here's something you don't see every day. 4 massive Boeing Chinooks carry out a tactical deployment on Middle Wallop's grass airfield. These versatile twin-rotor heavy lifters have taken on legendary status as the go-anywhere, do-anything aircraft of Britain's armed forces. Moving to Mildenhall, we're looking at the German Army Sikorsky CH-53G. It's a battlefield heavy lifter developed from the S-65 Sea Stallion, and it's used in support of their Army assault units. Its reputation, though, came from its starring role with the US Marine Corps in the Vietnam War, where it carried enormous loads into the heart of the battle zone.
that you see on the right.
But we have to return to Middle Wallop for their crowd-stopping, massed helicopter approach. Quite simply, this is unique. More than 80 helicopters arrive as pinpricks of light over the distant hills. As they get nearer, so the noise gets louder and louder. It could be twilight on a warm summer's day in 1918. Aircraft of the newly formed Royal Air Force are having a jolly before landing back on their grass strip. But it's not. It's 1998 and we're at Shuttleworth, the home of the world's largest collection of flyable pre-war aircraft. The Shuttleworth collection has been built up over 70 years, since its founder, Richard Shuttleworth, bought his first Moth in 1932. Private flying was at its most popular, spurred on by great leaps in aviation. Britain was in the forefront of aircraft design. Airspeed, height and endurance records were improving all the time. And in a factory at Hatfield, Geoffrey de Havilland was building one of the most famous families of aircraft ever, the Moth. Now this is an interesting sight. A 1921 English electric Wren built at a time of post-war economy. Speed was not an issue. The most important fact about this aircraft is that it once managed 87.5 miles on 1 gallon. Something for all those Ford Fiesta owners to think about.
Isn't that great?
In the post-war years, new aircraft in the RAF were in short supply. But one trainer that did make the grade was the Avro Tutor, of which this is the sole remaining example. By superseding the old Avro 504N, and in some cases the Tiger Moth, it became the elementary aircraft for most of those RAF pilots who went on to fight in the early months of the war. These three aircraft are great rarities now. The sleek Miles Falcon Racer was designed by F.G. Miles himself before he took over the builders Phillips and Powys. Like many of Miles' aircraft at the time, it was powered by a de Havilland Gypsy engine. Miles' first design, the M1 biplane, had been built by George Parnell at his factory in Yate in Gloucestershire. But Parnell built his own aircraft as well. This Parnell Elf is the last survivor of the three that were built in 1929. This BA Swallow is unique. It's a German design built under license in Britain. Originally appearing as the L-25 Clem in 1927, the UK agent, Major Stevens, initially imported aircraft before building them at a factory in Hanworth. 105 Swallows were built in Britain, of which the vast majority were used for private flying. This Aeroactive took part in handicapped short-distance races in the early 1930s, a time when air racing was immensely popular. This popularity was mainly due to the success achieved in the Schneider Trophy by R.J. Mitchell's three great S-Series seaplanes. The pilots were treated like Hollywood stars and mobbed wherever they appeared.
Aeroactive 2, because there were two airplanes, two Aeroactives. Aeroactive 1, each pilot's side.
At the other end of the air racing spectrum was the de Havilland Comet, an undoubted star of the show. It was created for and won a long-distance race, the 1934 McRobertson Air Race from England to Australia. By the late 30s, the monoplane was king. But in 1937, almost as a last hurrah to the biplane, the RAF began to fly the Gloucester Gladiator. That big Bristol Mercury radial engine pushed it to speeds of 250 miles an hour, fast for a biplane but still woefully slow for aerial combat. But the Gladi did a good job. It fought right the way through the first few years of the war, scoring many notable successes. Also on show, this time at Kemble, was the glorious DH-89A Dragon Rapide 4, flown by Pete Thorne. In 1928, squadron leader Bert Hinkler undertook the first solo flight from England to Australia. He flew an Avro Avian. 70 years on, Australian pilot Lang Kidby restored an original Avian to follow the same route.
We've got enough fuel once we've put our long-range tanks in for that flight to stay in the air for about 10 hours. And that's a very long time to stay on an open cockpit aircraft because they're very unpleasant after a while. The wind swirls around all the time, and it's a bit of an endurance test for the pilot as well as the aircraft.
His journey was delayed, though, due to a crash in testing. In a feat of engineering, the aircraft was repaired to airworthiness in record time. The jets were beating up the airfield, but all eyes were focused on this beast. On Sunday, May the 10th, the Berlin Airlift Historical Foundation's Douglas C-54 Skymaster, Spirit of Freedom, made its UK debut at North Weald Air Display. The C-54 was in Europe to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Berlin Airlift. Pilot and Foundation President Tim Chope talked to us about the tour.
Well, we had 5 months warning to prepare the airplane, and it was a major effort on Foundation volunteers to get the airplane prepared. We replaced all the hoses on all the engines, which is 26 hoses. A tremendous cost for that type of hose because it has to be fire sleeved for fire protection. We sealed several fuel tanks that we weren't happy with. We removed one engine and sent it out for repair for the long journey. Special GPS radio equipment and antennas for the crossing, not to mention the charts and all the logistics behind it, which takes a lot of time, a lot of money.
Among the crew were a number of Berlin Airlift veterans. Colonel Gail Halverson, famously known as the Candy Bomber, remembers those days 50 years ago.
It seems like it got some kind of reputation. I'm an old farm kid. I still can't believe it made such an impact. But I called me Uncle Wiggly. The kids in Berlin called me Uncle Wiggly Wings, and the Schokoladen flyer, the chocolate pilot, and the bonbon pilot. Well, anyways, I met some kids at the fence at Tempelhof in Berlin one day. Talked to them for an hour. The kids didn't have gum and candy then during the blockade. Hadn't had any for months, really. And then not enough to eat, all dried stuff. And 30 kids had me American one-on-one and didn't beg once for gum and candy. It blew my mind. Kids like that I met around the world with an American uniform, they'd chase you, shake me down, give me some gum and candy, we know you got some. But these kids didn't have any and wouldn't be beggars, wouldn't lower themselves to be beggars. They were so grateful for flour to be free. And boy, when I realized that, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Reached my pocket, all I had was 2 sticks of Wrigley's double mint gum. I said, 30 kids, 2 sticks, fight. And I said, you'll never see them again. Gonna give it or not? Turned, went back to the fence, broke in half, 4 pieces through the barbed wire. Kids that got to have a stick looked like they had a pension for life. The kids that didn't crowded in, thought, here comes the fight. But they didn't. They asked for just a piece of the wrapper, a thin piece of the wrapper. And as they passed the wrapper out on that half a stick, the kids put that wrapper up and smelled it. And their eyes got big. I couldn't believe what the scent on a strip of gum wrapper meant to kids under blockade. I couldn't come back out. I was there because I should have been in bed in West Germany waiting for the next trip, but I wanted to come there and walk around so I had freedom. I couldn't see him again, so how was I going to do it? No sleep for 24 hours. About that time, an airplane flew ahead and landed right behind me in the runway. I said, crumb, I can airmail it, deliver it tomorrow. Lose no sleep. But I said, you better get permission first. You got to have permission to drop stuff out of airplane. I says, hey, this whole airlift's not according to Hoyle. I'm going to do it anyway. So I says, kids, if you come back here in this space between the bombed out building and barbed wire fence tomorrow, I'm going to drop enough gum you can all have some, if you'll share it. Jawohl, jawohl, they said, we'll share it. And they said, how do we know what airplane you're in? Every 3 minutes. If you don't come before the afternoon, we won't be able to see that little package. I said, I'll wiggle the wings of that big airplane. And when you see that, that's got stuff. I said, let's do it. So the next day I came in, there they were. Hadn't told another soul. Wiggle the wings of the airplane, they went crazy. Came over their heads, pushed it out on 3 handkerchief parachutes. Taxied out to take off, and there were the handkerchiefs waving through the barbed wire at all the airplanes. The kids' mouths were going like this, and I knew they got it and shared it. I was afraid of getting caught. Well, anyway, still there for a week, did it 2 weeks, 3 weeks, crowd got bigger, and then I got caught. A newspaper man took a picture of my airplane dropping the parachutes. Commander chewed me out. The general says, hey, it's a good idea, let him do it. That's how it started. American candy manufacturer sent me over 20 tons of candy through Massachusetts, 22 schools in Massachusetts, put the parachutes on. Boxes already had dropped. dropped them out of their ski patches down the side of this old airplane, all over the city of West Berlin. That's how I got the nickname. Still going today. We're going to distribute a lot of candy and gum in Berlin the 26th.
Spirit of Freedom is not just a display aircraft, it's also a flying museum dedicated to preserve the memory of all the people who took part in the airlift. You have to admit, though, it sure does look wonderful in the air. We all look forward to its next trip and hope that the Foundation will also bring over its rare C-97 Stratofreighter.
They haven't lived through the years that someone of my age may have to know that the price of freedom is never free. Someone has to pay the price. And this is one message we try to convey with the Berlin airlift, is what the Berliners were willing to do to now go from a wartime period to a democracy.
As well as the C-54, we were treated to another classic sight from America, the Matt Constellation. This Connie was once owned by John Travolta and still oozes star appeal. Now owned by the Constellation Group of Scottsdale, Arizona, it's the first to visit Britain for 20 years, and we hope it won't be another 20 before it returns. The International Air Tattoo also commemorated the Berlin airlift in style. No less than 7 Dakotas, together with the Connie and the South African Airways historic flight DC-4, reenacted a day in the life of the airlift. And now for something completely different. At Mildenhall, we saw the C-17A Globemaster III, probably the most important and most versatile airlift aircraft in history. That may seem to be a rather sweeping statement, but you only have to look at the statistics to know it's true. It can fly high at 45,000 feet and fast at Mach 0.77. During testing, it proved capable of landing on virtually any type of strip. It can also carry a huge range of loads. 110 paratroops can fit easily into the vast cargo compartment. At the other end of the scale, it can heft the enormous M1, the American Army's newest battle tank. What is remarkable is that to do all this, it only needs 3 crew. There's no doubt that pilots love it.
The fly-by-wire systems are so responsive. The demonstration that we'll be doing today, you'll see the actual roll capability. It's very maneuverable, especially in a threat environment or a low-level environment. You can put the airplane at 45 degrees of bank and you can pull on it, and it does not feel like a heavy lumbering airplane. I've flown airplanes much smaller, to include the one I flew in pilot training, that are not as maneuverable to the feel as this airplane is. It's incredible.
But it's when you make direct comparisons with the C-130 that the C-17 comes into its own.
A lot of people have said that it's kind of like a 130 on steroids. It's just a bigger, more muscular 130, and it's true. We carry 18 pallets. They carry, what, 5 maybe? We carry 170,000 pounds of cargo. They carry 30. So, but we can both go in the same places and operate in a tactical environment just as easily. So I'd say that'd be the biggest advantage, is just size.
The US Air Force know that the C-17 is an important aircraft. In 1996, they signed what was the most expensive long-term contract in their history, $16.2 billion, not counting the engines. At Mildenhall, they showed us why.
This airplane is just now coming into, I think, its prime, and people are really realizing the actual capability that we have with this airplane. And I don't want to say it's going to replace it, because a 130 still has a unique mission. Still think 130, but I think people really and this airplane. This is going to be a choice. This is the United States Army's airplane. They jump out of it to do their airdrop. They like to deliver, take more, and
In the future, it's certain that C-17s will be bought by many other countries, including maybe the UK, to replace their C-130s. So let the pilot tell you what would have happened if the C-17 had been available during the Berlin airlift.
2 C-17s could have in all of the food that was delivered in the 13 months that have 2 times. So, that's food, and you 7 or 8 C-17 the entire Berlin airlift in a day.
Not to be outdone, Lockheed have been working on their old warhorse, the Hercules, and bringing it up to date yet again. 1998 has seen a remarkable world tour from this aircraft. 32 countries have been visited, and it's said that Britain was the most important, and one of the longest-serving users of Hercules. They first in 1997. It's brought plaudits from the world, powerful and more responsive, better engine, and the sight of blaze heavy lifter. It further higher and far for still a Hercules. The SBA at 50 this year, the BBC for their of this historic event. Here's many famous war aircraft first appearance at this historic. In the 90s, the most profitable trade show is perhaps civil aircraft. For example, plus 8 years helped the consortium industries, one of 2 commercial manufacturers in the world, to Boeing. At the other end of the scale is the regional jet, smaller, quieter aircraft which have less range but are more economical to run. One of the leaders in the 50-seat aircraft market is Bombardier Aerospace of Canada. Bombardier build the Dash series of twin turboprop regional airliners. The Dash 8300 displaying here was developed from a design originally launched in 1980. Another, but perhaps less well-known name in civil aviation is Embraer, the Brazilian designers of the RAF Tucano trainer. Their 145 twin turbofan regional airliner first flew in 1995. Just to confuse the issue, the shortened version, called the Embraer 135, flew after the 145. Its maiden flight was only in July this year. Here's another unusual sight in Britain, a Fokker 100 in KLM down the crowd at North. Is vital. So it was the United Airlines continuing their relationship with the Middle Wallop International Airshow this year, but also displaying one of their 568 aircraft. This majestic Boeing 767 celebrated 70 years of the world's largest airline. No airshow season is complete without an appearance by the world's most Concorde. It's nearly 30 after that first took to people still crane to see it just to get can have see us. The Popular Flying Association membership has grown to more than 9,000 in over 5 decades since it began. The annual rally at Cranfield is one of the highlights of the year. Literally hundreds of aircraft appear from all over the world, bringing pilots to view the latest home-builts and enjoy the company of other flyers. Europa Aviation is an important company in this market. Since the prototype in the early 80s, they've sold more than 500 of their kit planes worldwide. But previous aircraft have taken 2 years to build. The XS kit has brought the time down to just 1 year. It holds more baggage, is faster, and even for relative novices and part-timers is easier to build. The Steen Skybolt is another popular sporting and aerobatic aircraft, this time a biplane. As a home build, it's slightly more expensive than many others, but is still way cheaper than anything you could find on the commercial shelf. And here's the Laser Z200 based on the Stevens Acro from the 70s. The tubular steel fuselage and single-piece wing means that it's as good when flying inverted as it is the right way up. It makes a stunning aerobatic aircraft. And here's something of a rarity. This is the Great Lakes, a 2-seat sporting biplane from the United States. Around 250 were built in the 1930s, but only one of them has flown before in the UK and therefore gathered much interest from the crowd. Of course, the PFA Rally also brings a wide range of other aircraft, autogyros and microlights. There are paragliders and even a home-built helicopter. The PFA Rally is also a top-class airshow with aerobatics at the forefront of the displays. This is the popular Fly Yak from Eastern Europe. It's flown by John Griffin, a former International Tiger Club champion who now teaches competition aerobatics. One of the most popular displays again is that of the Tiger Club's team. Watch amazing gnarly. A month after this day, the GB dead during a display, killing the pilot Chris Wilkins. You'll never see a better opening to a display. It's the trademark of Gennady Ofimov and his Skytrace 2. At North Weald, he gave a storming performance and held the crowd transfixed with his manoeuvres. The Pitts Special is a classic aerobatic aircraft, first built in 1944 and made famous by the sadly missed Rothmans team of a few years ago. Denny Dobson has been flying this one since he built it at home 20 years ago. Recently, with his intriguing computer consultancy and software sponsors, he has given some wonderful performances.
He'll be black and blue. There are a number of manoeuvres coming up which you will look at the side of the aircraft. You'll see the Peapod's worldwide website address, www.peapod.co.uk.
There are some great aerobatic pilots on the circuit, and Nick Wakefield is one of them. He flies the Extra 300, a purpose-built single or two-seater aerobatic aircraft designed by Walter Extra in Germany. You'll see this aircraft again later, as it's the chosen mount of the Royal Jordanian Falcons display team. From a company more used to building fearsome heavy fighters comes a light aerobatic aircraft. This is the Su-26, built in Russia by Sukhoi. Its precision and sparkling performance places it in the front rank of display and competition aircraft. In recent years, Sukhoi have introduced the Su-29. Former British aerobatics champion and British team member Steve Jones talks us through his scintillating display at the PFA rally.
Continue the roll as we point back down, stop the roll, and now a hard push, pushing hard, thrown against the straps, about -5G, very unpleasant. And 2 points.
18 years, 1931, the Schneider Trophy Air Race was held 12 times. The story of Supermarine's 3 wins in 1927, 29 and 31 and how they inspired R.J. Mitchell's classic Spitfire design is famous and often told. Perhaps less well known is that pilots have competed for a replica of the original trophy since 1981, exactly 50 years after Mitchell's outright win. The Schneider is round 4 of the British Air Racing Championship and is a handicap race designed to produce a simultaneous finish. This year it was held at Bembridge on the Isle of Wight, an area long associated with the trophy. The aircraft are all privately owned and not purpose-built for racing as they were in the old days. That doesn't mean, though, that the competition is any less fierce. As they flew towards the finish at the end of the 3rd lap, a total race length of around 100 miles, the sky was full. It's undoubtedly one of the most exciting sights in aviation. Second was Burt Miles in the twin-engine Beech Baron BE-55, who became the eventual British Air Racing Champion of the Year. On this occasion, the winner was Mitch Konstantinovich, flying his Cessna 120. Who also picked up an award for the youngest pilot in the race. The King's Cup is the last race in the Royal Aero Club's calendar. This year it was to be held at the Leicester Aero Club. The precursor to the race was provided by the powerful little Formula One aircraft. Formula One is a huge sport in the United States, but despite its excitement, doesn't have the following it deserves in this country. Andrew Chadwick, head of British Formula One racing, told us about the sport and the aircraft that take part.
Handicap racing it's a class race, it's pure speed. The formula is basically it's a 100 horsepower engine, 66 square feet minimum wing area, 500 pounds minimum unladen weight. You've got to be able to see 5 degrees over the nose and 25 degrees over the wings from an angle of 20 degrees, I think, something like that. They all end up about the same size, about 20 feet long, 20 feet wide, and they go anything from 180 through 250 miles an hour.
Races are normally 8 to 10 laps. Each lap is 3 miles around a stretched hexagon course marked by pylons. It's fast, it's furious, and they fly incredibly low. Just watch this. But this year, it didn't go according to plan. A few laps into the race, tragedy. Andrew Chadwick's White Lightning nosedived into the ground at 250 miles an hour. Understandably, all the other pilots wanted to get down as soon as possible. Miraculously, Andrew Chadwick got away from the crash with relatively minor injuries, and he's already talking about racing again next year. These aircraft are built with metal cages around the pilot, giving similar protection enjoyed by drivers of Formula One racing cars. Understandably, the King's Cup was cancelled, but air racing is recommended watching. Take the time to visit next year. The heart of any airshow is the display team. There are many great teams in the world, and we have 7 of the best to show you now. So where better to start than the wildest of the lot? The Turkish Stars came to Mildenhall this year after their cracking display at Fairford in 1997. Their 7 Northrop NF-5A Freedom Fighters performed a bewildering routine of set-piece formations, fast passes, rolls and climbs. But you needed good eyesight. You never knew where they were coming from next. The Slovak Air Force aerobatic team, the White Albatrosses, were due to open the International Air Tattoo at Fairford on Saturday the 25th of July, but unfortunately they got stuck in the traffic. They were, however, able to make up for lost time on the Sunday, showing to best effect the performance of their L-39 jet trainers. As we bring you the thrills of the Royal Jordanian Falcons. This is precise control at its best. This display needs no introduction. 2 1940s Boeing Stearman biplanes, 2 pilots and 2 daredevil aero babes. The Crunches are back in town.
Pulling up and rolling down the line at the air. But if anything goes wrong with that, there is no second chance. Now the 2 aircraft split off left and right to give full amount on top of the aeroplane. No hands, no feet. Up the crunchy bump. Whee!
Staying with biplanes for a while, we move back to an age when flying was just for fun. The classic Tiger Moth seems to have been flying forever. In truth, it's only 67 years since the prototype took to its maiden flight. The vast majority of more than 7,000 built were flown by the services for 20 years. But then they came onto the private market, and you could have bought a small slice of history for just £100, or maybe even less. Here are 9 of them, from the Olympus Diamond 9. For best teams in the world. Flying ultra close are the Dassault Breguet Alpha jets of the French Air Force aerobatic team, the Patrie de France. The team is unusual in that it flies 8 aircraft, a number that's generally considered almost unworkable when flying formation. But they seem to cope all right. This program wouldn't be complete without the Red Arrows. This year, airshow regulations have changed, so the Reds are no longer allowed to fly over the crowds, but it doesn't seem to have affected the quality of their displays. Created 33 years ago, they've represented Britain and the RAF in all the corners of the globe, from a performance over the Niagara Falls to tours of Australia and South Africa. The trademark Diamond 9, led this year by Squadron Leader Simon Mead, heralds the beginning of another inch-perfect display. The Red Arrows were preceded in the RAF by the Black Arrows, a team formed from 111 Squadron. The Black Arrows flew Hawker Hunters, and keeping up the tradition is Delta Jets, based at the old Red Arrows headquarters at Kemble Airfield in Gloucestershire. We went behind the scenes at Delta and talked to Martin Stoner, who regularly flies Hunter T7A WV318.
I think of all the aircraft, it's the Hunter. I mean, I've flown Lightnings and Tornadoes and things like that. I think of all the British jets that people like myself have flown, I think they would, to a man, they would say the Hunter is the most beautiful aircraft to fly, the most fun, and it also looks beautiful. It's quite interesting. I suppose I shouldn't say this, but I think this is loved and cared for more than when it was in the Air Force. This is loved, cherished, polished, and patted on the head before every sortie. It's in beautiful condition.
And now we get a chance to see this classic aircraft perform.
Flaps down, leading off the speed. Keeping that nose up, deploying the parachute. Slow them right down. Very nice display. Just on a very gentle display.
One earlier type, of which there are a few still flying, is the de Havilland Vampire. This T-11, flown at Kemble Air Day by Rod Dean, is an example of the first jet aircraft on which the RAF pilots learned their trade and qualified for their wings. The Vampire was followed into the RAF by the minute Folland Gnat trainer. Despite its size, it was chosen to be the first aircraft flown by the Red Arrows from 1965 until 1979, when it was replaced by the Hawk. The Gnat's flown by ex-RAF pilot Bob Thompson at North Weald.
Smoke on, roll.
The largest of the privately owned jets is the Canberra of Classic Aviation Project at Bruntingthorpe. The Canberra is one of the greatest record breakers of all time. Not least of these records is that it still flies in the photographic reconnaissance role in the RAF today, some 49 years after the prototype made its maiden flight. It also made history when it was manufactured in America by the Martin Company as the B-57 for the United States Air Force. New on the scene this year were two BAC 167 Strike Masters from Transair. In the colours of the Botswana and Kenyan Air Forces, they've brought back to the airshow the days of pyrotechnics. Of course, the Strike Masters were developed for export from the Jet Provost, which served as a basic jet trainer for the RAF for more than 30 years. They like it big, fast and noisy. The Heavy Metal Brigade was out in force this year, and they were treated to a real feast of goodies. As usual, the first stop was Mildenhall. The air fate was cloudy and murky this year, but it didn't stop an array of fast jets performing. Returning to Mildenhall after last year's impressive display was the Saab JA-37 Viggen, meaning Thor's hammer or thunderbolt. On the ground, it looks a solid, heavy aircraft. But when it flies and the beautiful lines can be seen to full effect, it transforms into an aircraft of outstanding performance. Mach 2 at high altitude and still supersonic low down, the Viggen continues Sweden's amazing record for home-designed classics. The Viggen's been in service in Sweden for more than 20 years. And from the same stable comes another winner, the JAS-39A Gripen. The Gripen is a fourth-generation multi-role aircraft that's already in service with the Swedish Air Force as interceptor, attack and reconnaissance aircraft. One of the most eagerly awaited displays at any airshow is that of the MiG-29 Fulcrum. This awesome aircraft was the most feared weapon in the Soviet arsenal during the last days of the Cold War, a time when more than 300 of them were deployed in East Germany alone. The display shows at its best the maneuverability needed for a classic dogfighter that was destined to come up against the West's best lightweight fighter, the Lockheed F-16 Fighting Falcon. Not only is the F-16 the best in the West, it's also the most numerous. So successful has it been, it's constantly upgraded for the regular orders from around the world. This is one of the tightest displays you'll ever see. The pilots of these two French Air Force Mirage F-1Cs won the Douglas Bader Trophy for Best Overall Flying Demonstration at Fairford, and you can see why. This is the jewel in the crown of the Russian aerospace industry. The Su-27 flanker display at Yeovilton showed, as it has many times before, a range of maneuvers enjoyed by no Western aircraft. This one comes from the Flight Research and Aerobatics Group at the Gromov Institute in Russia, and, as was expected, wowed the crowd with its stunning routine. It was disappointing to the Fairford crowd that the Ukrainian Tupolev Tu-22 M3 backfire bomber wasn't able to display. We're able, however, to show you the aircraft as it arrived the week before the show. This potent aircraft was the mainstay of the Soviet Union's supersonic strike force during the 1970s, when it could carry a lethal load of up to 6 short-range nuclear missiles. One of the most famous events in the Cold War was the shooting down of Gary Powers in a U-2 spy plane over Russia in 1960. This setback didn't halt the U-2 program, and U-2s have continued to be vital intelligence gathering systems. This U-2S comes from the 9th Reconnaissance Wing at Beale Air Force Base in California. The 2 big American bombers, however, did fly during the display. The Boeing B-52H was originally built to carry Skybolt. But when the last one of 102 had been completed, John F. Kennedy cancelled Skybolt. Since then, they've been modified to carry up to 20 cruise missiles, a massive force in one enormous aircraft. It's now 10 years since the Rockwell B-1B Lancer production was completed. In that time, its career has been interrupted by well-publicised losses and subsequent groundings. It was a period of enforced inactivity that meant the B-1B took no part in the Gulf War. However, when the pilot puts his foot down, it's still one of the most impressive sights in aviation. To round off this array of heavy metal, we have an unusual participant in Britain, the McDonnell Douglas F-15C Eagle. It was the star of the American contingent at Mildenhall, an aircraft not seen at a British air display for 7 years. Captain York had flown especially from his base in Florida with his support team to make this one quick visit. If you're going to fly a complex machine in front of 150,000 people, complete concentration is essential. The US Air Force likes to look good as well. A formal salute as Captain York signs for many $1 million worth of aircraft. Then possibly the loudest sound you will ever hear in the open air as the F-15 starts up and taxis onto the runway.
The airplane you see here today is an airplane right off the ramp over at Lakenheath, Royal Air Force Lakenheath. The guys over there were nice enough to let us use their airplane, and it's just a stock F-15. The only difference is it doesn't have any external fuel tanks, but we really don't do anything to it.
Now sit on the edge of your seat and enjoy Captain York's display.
Well, basically, the different ranges of the airplane. You know, we show you slow speed with the gear down and how well it handles. We also show you almost 600 miles an hour straight and level over the runway. And then we show acceleration, and as well we show climb, where you know, I'll go on high show day. It wasn't today, but on the high show day, we'll climb from the surface all the way to 23,000 feet in just a matter of seconds. So incredible acceleration and incredible performance at slow speeds, which translates to an airplane that's probably the best air superiority fighter in the whole world.
At the end of his performance, Captain York and 2 American pilots, Ed Shipley and Regis Ursula, put on one of the most precise displays of flying you will ever see. Formating with 2 P-51 Mustangs is difficult enough, but these 3 aircraft with a top speed difference of around 1,200 miles an hour stayed together through a display full of turns and passes. The 2 Mustangs themselves put on a beautiful display. From design to prototype, the North American Mustang took barely 100 days to build, but the first marks were too underpowered with their Allison engines. Later marks were fitted with an American-built Merlin engine. Huge range and a top speed of 450 miles an hour transformed the Mustang. From this point, its reputation grew. In the last 18 months of the Second World War, the Mustang played possibly the biggest part in the crucial battle, that of escorting and protecting huge formations of 8th Air Force bombers over Germany. Flying Legends is one of the most eagerly awaited air shows of the season. Stephen Gray's Fighter Collection hosts the show at the Imperial War Museum, Duxford. Over the years, it has gained a reputation for displaying 2- and 3-ship formations, not seen anywhere else in the UK. This was such a formation. The A-26 Invader, the B-25 Mitchell, and the biggest and heaviest piston engine fighter ever, the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. All three aircraft share one distinction. They were all used in World War II and all served for many years afterwards, the last being the A-26, which served operationally as late as the Vietnam War. If you're a cat spotter, then here are 4 for your collection. These are fighting cats, all built by Grumman and all carrier-based aircraft. Taxiing out is the F-7F Tiger Cat unfolding its wings. In the background you can see the F-6F Hellcat. Now it's the turn of the earliest of the quartet, the F-4F Wildcat, which first flew in 1937. It was also flown by the Royal Navy and called the Martlet. Finally, the most recent. Flown by Stephen Gray, it's the F-8F Bearcat, the fastest piston-engined aircraft ever. If you've never seen these aircraft, then go to Flying Legends. It's the only place in this country you'll ever see them together. And now, an even bigger display. Taking off first are 3 Voigt Corsairs, the big cranked-winged naval fighter bombers. These 3 are in the colours of the US Navy, the Royal Navy, and the Royal New Zealand Navy. They're followed by the Grumman Avenger torpedo bombers. Almost 10,000 of these barrel-shaped aircraft were built, including nearly 1,000 for the Royal Navy. Finally, the Douglas Sky Raiders. They were designed as dive bombers to replace the Dauntless, but ended up as some of the most versatile aircraft ever to fly. In a 20-year career that spanned both Korea and Vietnam, they were used for ground attack, radar surveillance, and electronic countermeasures. Some were even given nuclear capability. Now for something British. Developed from the Tempest II, the Hawker Fury failed to secure a place in the RAF due to the ending of the war and the coming of the jet age. Hawker fared better with the Sea Fury, which became a stalwart of the Fleet Air Arm as a fighter-bomber from 1947 until the mid-50s. This piston-engined aircraft held its own even against MiG-15s during the Korean War. The first MiG falling to a Sea Fury was in 1952, shot down by Lieutenant Peter Carmichael of 802 Squadron. If the Red Arrows represent the RAF today, then it's the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight that represents the past. The BBMF appear at dozens of air shows throughout the year, led majestically by the last surviving airworthy Lancaster in Britain. It's lovingly protected either by 2 Spitfires or by a single Spitfire and a Hurricane. The flight is based at Coningsby in Lincolnshire, where the officer commanding Squadron Leader Paul Day is in his 19th season as fighter leader.
You could say in terms of the administrative process that any one air display season will be about 60 to 70% like previous seasons. The real nightmare in terms of that process stems from the fact that being historic aeroplanes at Battle of Britain flight, then we have a restricted number of hours, so you therefore do this huge jigsaw to try and get much more than a quart out of a pint pot. And in practical terms, what that means is if I'm going to launch aeroplanes, then they really ought to be undertaking something like 4 or 5 displays or flypasts in a single sortie, which of course restricts us to, largely speaking, operations on the UK mainland. It's why we can't go overseas too much, because all the transit time counts. That really is the perennial problem. The rest of it is really a technical matter of whether we can produce aeroplanes on time, which normally we can, and the only factors which adversely affect it is if we are dependent upon outside suppliers over whom we have no control. And if they deliver late, then clearly the technical process gets behind. But that really hasn't happened to a great extent this year.
And this aircraft is still got the
Because I suppose perhaps Britain is more aware of its history than most other nations are, it is relatively recent in that there are still obviously a fair number of people around, but on a diminishing basis have actually participated. But I think more than anything else, people are entertained more by things with which there is a direct human contact. Now, by that I mean, if you fly in a Tornado, you are largely a systems manager. The aeroplane can actually fly itself better than you can. And I would actually put it down to that the aeroplanes look good. I mean, there is, for my money, certainly nothing that looks better than a Spitfire. And I think people relate to the sort of human interface with those machines where you do everything for yourself. I mean, you navigate it, you fly it. If it was war, then you do all that all on your own. And I think it is that element of it which people find so attractive. And I know it must be very disappointing to turn up at a display in a 40 million quid jet and nobody wants to look at it because they want to look at a Spitfire.
Among the flight's aircraft is a Spitfire 2A, the oldest airworthy Spitfire in the world and a survivor of the Battle of Britain.
The most popular versions was the Mark 5 and the Mark 9. A real pig to build. A real pig to build. So quite different in construction to the Hurricane, but extremely efficient.
Well, it's obviously an immense privilege because I get to do and get paid for what millionaires tear their hair out trying to do, and they tell me it's all not worthwhile, etc., etc. It's actually, well, it's an absolute one-off job, and of course if you're at all interested in historic aeroplanes, then it's absolutely unique. I mean, we've got Lancaster, Dakota, 5 Spitfires, 2 Hurricanes, and a couple of Chipmunks to play with. It's somewhat difficult to imagine a better train set.
We hope that the memorial flight is here to stay so that it can continue to provide that nostalgic pleasure to so many. Of course, there are many other airworthy Spitfires, almost 50 in the world, all celebrating 60 years since first entering service with the RAF. Here are some of those wonderful aircraft. North Weald produced 4 of the best warbirds displays of the year. Here are the aircraft restoration companies Bristol Blenheim and Western Lysander.
Story about the Blenheim, certainly once it gets airborne, but these are 2 really quite historic airplanes. In the Blenheim's case, it's unique.
Flown here by John Webb, the Blenheim is a second restoration after a horrendous crash destroyed the first. It provides a great tribute to all the courageous aircrew who flew these aircraft in the early years of the war. The Lysander had an entirely different career. It was made famous by pilots flying them on long trips into the heart of France, risking their lives to deliver secret agents. The Black Lysanders, as they were known, made over 400 such trips.
So he's got flap and slat safely tucked away at the moment, but if he comes round and flies into wind, there's a good chance that you'll see the aeroplane flying quite slowly, and you might even be able to see the leading edge slats deployed along with some of that big flap area. It's very important because you're interested, especially if you're going into dark, rough fields at night, which this strong undercarriage is very good at coping with. You need to be flying under control as slowly as possible, and that's what these high lift devices give you. And we're to come down, and there's the aeroplane really flying quite slowly. We haven't got a headwind today, but that is slow. You can imagine.
Yeah, you can see them out.
You can see the slats out there.
The Fiesler Storch was the first true STOL aircraft designed and built before the Second World War. Those long, spindly legs gave a quite remarkable performance. It could take off in 50 meters and land in just 15. For reconnaissance, it had a minimum speed of 32 miles an hour. Terrific for spotting even the minutest detail. The only problem was, it was German.
Has anybody told you at the briefing who's flying this time? No? Fine. Well, I don't know either. Oh, it's Dennis Neville! Oh, good, I know about Dennis. Friend Dennis. Yes, indeed. Been flying quite a while, as our Dennis started in night. Look out to the left, here come the fighters.
No airshow review would be complete without the Intrepid Aviation's Mustang, flown as usual by Norman Lees. Nothing needs to be said. Just watch this beautiful aircraft power its way through the sky.
I was watching this display pilot. Keeps the aircraft in front of you, shows off the aeroplane. Started off with the American designer Bill Allison engine, and Norman pulling it fast. Hammer on.
We thought we wouldn't see her this year, but she finally made it to Yeovilton. Sally B is possibly the most famous warbird in Britain, and it's mainly due to the persistence of Ellie Sallingboe, the driving force behind the Sally B Supporters Club and B-17 Limited. B-17G-105VE, to use her proper title, has been in Britain for 23 years now. She's been a film star and a television star, but her home is the Airshow. We mustn't miss this aircraft that's tended to be forgotten in all the glory attached to the Spitfire. It's also celebrating 60 years in service. This one is a Hawker Sea Hurricane 1B owned by the Shuttleworth collection that started its life in Canada at the end of 1940. Against the Bedford sunset, pilot Andy Sefton puts on a stunning display. There's no better way to round off British Airshows 98 than with the traditional finale to Flying Legends, the Balbo. It's named after Colonel Balbo, who flew large formations of seaplanes across the Atlantic between the wars. 36 great piston-engine warbirds in formation over the Cambridge countryside.